Hello everyone. This is section or lesson 9, the last lesson in section 2. In this video, I'll be explaining internal and external communication, the types of communication that happens inside the business and outside the business. Alright, so let's start. So, effective communication and its importance to business. We're going to be speaking about communication, uh, the types of communication, and the importance of of communication for the business, and not only any type of communication, effective communication and its effect on the business. So, let's start. So, communication occurs when a message is transferred from one person to another who understand the content of the message. So, the first thing we must understand is the word communication. So let's see what is the actual definition of the word communication. Communication is transferring or sending a message from the sender to the receiver who understands the message. So here in this definition, we must know that there is a sender who's sending actual message, or he's transferring a message for the receiver, who understand the content of this message. So let's see what is meant by message as well. A message is the information or instructions being passed by the sender to the receiver. So as you can see, we always have this sender, and we have the receiver, and the thing that is sent, or the instruction or the information sent from the sender to the receiver, it's called the message. And when this process is happening, it's called the communication process. So as you all know, we all communicate with other people every day. We communicate with our families at school and college, or whenever we want to transfer a certain message to another, let's say, person. So communication with others is a natural part of our life. So as we can communicate with each other in our normal life, as well in business, they communicate whether between employees or with other businesses. So we have here two types of communication. The first one is internal communication. So let's see what is meant by internal communication. So from the word internal, we're going to understand that it is between members of the same organization. So when I'm communicating internally, it means that I'm let's say, doing this kind of communication with members from or inside the business, or from the same organization. So because like it's necessary for people to communicate with each other in various ways, because without communication, what would happen? We would all be working as individuals. There would be no teamwork, with no links with anybody else in the business we work in. So I can, let's say, communicate the tasks of the management. I could be instructing, I could be sending a warning, or I could just be, as a manager, encouraging workers to do something better, to let them, let's say, to instruct them to do a specific thing. So here are some examples of common messages communicated within the business. So here we have, over here and in the coming page, we have examples of internal communication. How can I, let's say, communicate with employees or workers inside the business? So for example, please do not smoke in this area. I could leave a notice on the table. Or how many hours did you work last week, as a manager asking, using the verbal communication with another worker. I could leave a notice on the board, or I can do a telephone call. I need you to just focus on, like, we have different examples, just focus on the way it is used with the internal communication. And also here we have an email, or a sign on the door. Or even a written letter to an employee, or even meeting the members of the organization, or the team inside the business. So whichever way we are using to communicate with members in the same organization, it is referred to as internal communication. And the second type of communication, it's external communication. So external communication, it's the contrary of internal communication. So let's see the term external communication. So external communication, it's between the organization and other organization or individual. Whenever I'm communicating with someone not from the same organization, with someone who is from outside the organization, whether a normal individual, a businessman maybe, or maybe another organization from business A to business B. I'm sending a message from business A to business B. It's called external communication. So here we have also examples of external communication. I can like communicate with other organizations or with other individuals. For example, if I'm ordering goods or materials from suppliers, because suppliers, they are external, let's say, individuals, or sending information to customers about prices or and delivery times. I'm also communicating with customers, and customers, they are, let's say, not from the same organization. I'm talking with someone who is from outside the organization, as well as advertising goods or services. This is also covered in the chapter that we are going to be talking about, which is promotion, the promotion part. Also, if I'm just like referring to my goods and services, I'm sending messages about my goods and services through advertising. It's also an external way of communicating. It's an external communication. Or asking customers to pay bills on time. Also, we're referring here to customers as well as this example. It is just as important for a business to have a good external communication as good internal communication. So here, both of them are extremely important to the business. It's important to have a really efficient, let's say, communication. The key features of both types are the same. The methods of communication can be used are also similar, which is when we are referring to methods of communication, which is like email or phone call, or even verbally talking to someone, or it's a written, let's say, communication, which can be used also similar. Although the growth of the internet and social networking has transformed how a business can communicate with the outside world or to communicate externally, the main differences between internal and external communication is whom is being communicated with. Someone from within the business, or in the same organization, or from outside. So, why external communication has to work? External communication is very important. Why it's very important? Because it's affecting the image and efficiency of the business. So whenever I'm externally communicating with someone from outside the organization, I must make sure that the method used in the communication part, it's let's say efficient, because it's going to affect the image of my business and also the efficiency of the business itself. If a company communicates inefficiently with the supplier, what would happen? Okay, it may be sent the wrong, let's say, material. If it sends inaccurate, or I can send inaccurate information to customers, they may buy a product from another company. So I might face problem just because I was inefficient with my external communication. So here are some more examples of external communication. Previously, we talked about, let's say, examples of internal communication. Here, we're going to be talking about a few examples of external communication, and we're going to see how things like it could go bad if I wasn't, let's say, efficient with my communication with people from outside the organization. Imagine that even like a finance manager writes a letter to the tax office asking how much tax must be paid this year. If I'm, let's say, I'm talking to, let's say, the tax office, which is an office related to the government, I must be, let's say, professional, I must be efficient, the information sent must be accurate and clear and right. And also, let's say a sales manager records a customer order taken over the internet for 330 items to be delivered by next Wednesday. So I have to make sure to understand, let's say, when it comes to time, to number of units taken from the customer, who is an external, let's say, factor in the communication. And a business must contact thousands of customers who have bought a product, which turns out to be dangerous. An email is sent to all customers who bought the product to ask them to return the item for a refund. And also, this is another example of externally communicating to customers and, let's say, sending information related to a product that my business is actually producing. Now, in order to have an effective communication, there is a process. All right, so the process of effective communication. So, if I want to have an effective communication, the effective communication involves four main features. So, let's see what are these four main features. The first feature, or the first, let's say, factor in the communication process, it's the transmitter or sender of the message. So, this is the first one. This is the person who wishes to pass on information to others. This person has to choose the next two features carefully in order to make sure that communication occurs effectively. So the first one is the transmitter, or we can call him the sender. And the sender, let's say one of his features is that he is going to choose the medium and the receiver as well. So the medium of the communication, um, or a method of for sending the message, for example a letter or a notice board. I'm the next, let's say, feature is choosing the method of communication. How am I going to send this information or this message as a sender? And the third feature is the receiver of the information, the one who receives, let's say, the information. He's the one who receives the information, and it's and he's the person that the message should be sent to. And the fourth feature is the feedback. The feedback where the receiver confirms that the message has been received. This is number one. And the second part of feedback is responding to this information. I'm not just receiving the information from the sender, but as well as a receiver, I'm responding. I'm not just confirming, no, yeah, yes, I did receive the information. No, I have, let's say, a comment. I have an opinion. I have something to respond. This ensures that the information has been correctly received by the third person, and if necessary acted upon. So the feedback is important for the sender to make sure that the receiver actually received the message and fully understood the meaning of the message, and also let's say the respond for, if necessary, the respond for this message. And also here we have the definitions of the features over here: transmitter, we have the medium or the method, the receiver, and the feedback as well. So here we have let's say the one-way and two-way communication. So let's see the difference between one-way communication and two-way communication. The first one is the one-way communication. When I'm using a one-way communication, it involves a message, of course, which does not call or require for a response. I'm just like sending a message to someone, and it's not necessary to have a feedback, or let's say a response, or to actually, let's say, ask the receiver to, let's say, confirm receiving the message or to respond upon this message. And occurs when the receiver of a message has no chance to reply or respond to this message. An example would be instruction to, let's say, take these goods to the customer. It's a one-way communication, does not allow the receiver to have any kind of contribution or a feedback uh, from this message. Just a one way from A to B, not asking B to respond in any way. And also we have the second thing, it's the two-way communication. It's when the receiver actually gives a response for the message, and also let's say discussion is accepted, and opinions and comments, feedback is accepted, which is two ways communication. And actually the sender is actually waiting for let's say a response or an answer in return. And as we said, like previously when we were talking about the features, it could be just a simple confirmation that you just received the message, or it could also be a discussion about the message that the sender just sent. Both people are therefore involved in the communication process. This could lead to better and clearer information. And also here in the two-way communication, both features are involved, unlike the one-way communication where only the sender is involved. Now, let's see the advantages the advantages of two-way communication. Two-way communication. So when the receiver has to or decides to give the feedback to the sender of the message, there are two main benefits. So what are the benefits when there is two-way communication, or actually the receiver, let's say, responding to the message I just sent? It should become absolutely clear to the sender whether or not the person receiving the message has understood it, acted upon it. So it's like just a confirmation for the sender that actually everything is fine, it's understood, and if let's say and it's acted upon it if the sender asked for a specific task. If they have not, then perhaps the message needs to be sent again or to be made clearer. This is like an indication for the sender that changes must be done towards the message, whether to send it again or to, let's say, use better language, use a better, let's say, structure to make it more clear for the receiver. Effective communication has not taken place until message is understood by the receiver. Number two, or the second benefit over here, let's put one over here, and second one, both people are now involved in the communication process. The receiver feels more a part of this process. In the two-way communication, the receiver, let's say, feels more involved and will feel that there's a, let's say, real contribution to the topic, and also it's a part of, let's say, motivating the receiver, or making him or her feel that his opinion matters, his feedback is required, and so on. So here we have the communication methods. Okay, the communication methods. So the first one, we have three communication methods. The first method is the verbal methods of communication and involves the sender of the message speaking to the receiver, actually using spoken words and actually using, let's say talking from the sender, sending a message, and speaking to the receiver. And the second one is written methods of communication, includes letters, notices, posters, but increasingly involve the use of information technology, not just like letters. I could send an email, a written email, and so on. And also the third one is the visual methods of communication. It includes methods such as diagrams, charts, and videos. So if I want to ask myself as a manager or a sender of the message, which is the best way to communicate a message? Shall I use verbal, written, or visual? There is no simple answer to this question. Sometimes it's better to use verbal, uh, um, and on other occasions essential to use written. We have different messages require different methods of communication, so there is no best method in all cases. It depends on the situation, it depends on the cases. So choosing the appropriate communication method. So if I had to choose, or I have to choose the appropriate communication method, so there are several factors, and actually in the book we have seven main, let's say, factors that the sender of the message should consider before choosing the most appropriate method to use to communicate with the receiver. So I have to consider all these factors before choosing whether I want to do it verbally, written communication, or a visual communication. Number one is speed. So speed. Number one is speed. It is important that the receiver gets the information real quickly. I want to ask myself, is it like urgent? Is it I need this information to be, let's say, right, to be sent right away? What is the method that's going to allow me to send the message more quick? And number two, cost. It is important to keep costs down, or it is important to communicate effectively regardless of the cost. So, for example, customers need to be informed about a serious safety problems with a product. So, what is the cost? Whether it's a monetary cost or just let's say, a cost that something that I will have to, let's say, bear because of, let's say, this this message I'm sending to the receivers. And number three, it depends on the message details. If the message has a lot of details, it has a lot of, let's say, it needs the receiver to see figures, to see illustrations, to see, let's say videos. It's usually, let's say, based on the amount of details this message I have to choose whether it's written, visual, or even, let's say, verbal communication. Number four, it's the leadership style. It is the leadership style a democratic one. If it is, then two-way verbal methods of communication with employees are much more likely to be used than it would be an autocratic leader. It depends on the leadership style that the manager is, let's say, using in that business. And number five, the receiver. Who is receiving this message? I have to consider who is, let's say, the one who is getting the message I'm sending. If it's just one person has to be communicated with, or a group of people, based on that, or based on the person, the receiver, I will, let's say, choose the appropriate way or method of communicating. And importance of a written record. It is essential that a written record can be referred to at some point in the future. That's clearly verbal communication would be inappropriate, especially when we are talking about um, let's say, legal contracts. Let's say, as we let's say explained the previous lessons, when we are doing an official agreement, when we are doing, let's say, a partnership, when we are doing something official with another party, we have to make sure that we are, let's say, the written communication, it's more appropriate. And number seven, the importance of feedback. So I have to consider whether which method of communication is going to allow the receiver to give me feedback, especially if it's essential for the sender to get a feedback real quickly from the receiver. Which way is going to give me instant feedback? So here we have verbal communication methods. So verbal or oral communication methods include, so if I choose verbal communication, how can I verbally communicate with others? It's either face-to-face, one-to-one talks, meetings between the sender and the receiver. I can use the telephone, I can use video conferences, where groups of people in different locations are able to see and hear each other through a video, like Zoom, like Google Classroom, uh, or I can go live. And meetings and team briefings, which could involve few or many people. I can do meetings. I can, let's say, ask the group of employees to meet at a certain time and place. The advantages of verbal communication. Why would I choose verbal communication? What is the benefit of verbal communication? Number one, it's the speed that we just talked about. Its information can be given out quickly. I just can verbally communicate with the one who is, let's say, receiving the message. So when this happens at big meetings, it's an efficient way of communicating with large number of people, and also the number of people. So I can, let's say, the advantages, and it's quick, and I can talk to a lot of people at the same time. There is an opportunity for immediate feedback and two-way communication, of course. The message is often reinforced by seeing the speaker. So when I'm using verbal communication, I can actually understand, I can see the body language of the speaker, and I can see how they are standing, what is their facial expressions, and it can help me to put, let's say, the message across effectively. I can understand the message more appropriately, or more in an efficient way when I actually see the receiver's body language and facial expressions. Meanwhile, the disadvantages of verbal communication, um, in a big meeting, there is no way of telling whether everybody is listening or has understood the message. There is no way to guarantee that everyone is listening, and it can take longer to use verbal methods when feedback occurs than to use a written form of communication. So If there's a lot of people, it's hard, and I'm using verbal communication, it's hard to get feedback from everyone, unlike the written form of communication where the receiver can actually send me an email, send me something that I can actually read. And number three, when an accurate and permanent record of the message is needed, such as a warning to a worker, a verbal method it's inappropriate. So if I need, let's say if I use the verbal communication, there is no actual record to, let's say, to make sure that this message has been said, this warning has been made, and that's why it makes the verbal method more inappropriate. Written communication methods includes those based on information technology. So here in the written communication, like in the old days we used, let's say, letters, but now then let's say we have more information technology involved in the written communication. Written methods of communication, it includes the following. Let's see, it includes what? Number one, business letters used for either internal or external communication. They should follow a set of structure because business letters are, let's say, formal, they are professional, and memos, an abbreviation of memorandum. Written messages used only internally. I can use write a memo and I can put it on the notice board, or I can put it on the table. Many businesses use computers to send through the internal email system. Example of memo, it's like the example that we're going to see over here. Instead of actually using a paper, a memo, and to actually put it on the board, no, I just can send it like through an email. Number three, reports. What is a report? Report is a detailed document about a particular issue or a problem. So if I have a problem, it's better to use written communication to actually write all the needed details about the specific situation or a problem. And usually the ones who do the reports are experts working in the business, experts finding this problem and actually writing specific details about it and sending it to whoever it may concern. This can be sent to managers to read before meeting or to discuss the issue. Very often these reports are so detailed that they could not be understood by employees. This is going to be understood by the one who is, let's say, more interested in this problem. We have notices pinned on the board, and it's displayed information and for everyone to see. And but the bad thing about the notices pinned on the board, that there's no certainty. I cannot, let's say, be certain that everyone's going to read this notice pinned on the board, or even the written memo. Text messages, let's say using the phone, because phone is like a major part in everyone's life. It's quick and it's a convenient communication way, communication with others. And we are talking here about the SMS messaging. Um, let's say if I want something real quick, let's say over here they put an example, meet me at 2 please. I can send it like this is an informal way of sending an information to the receiver. Text messages, we use them, or the SMS, because they are easy, discreet way of communicating with others. And also it allows the sender to communicate with others in situation where face-to-face or phone conversation is not possible or appropriate. Something real quick, I can send it real quick. Like we have a meeting, let's say be there at 5 and so on. So it's also, as I said, it's informal. Um, and here we have email, social networking sites, tweeting, and other forms of electronic in communicating using information technology. And this is like the main, let's say, like the new thing using technology. And emails are highly used in the in businesses. These have a revolutionized communication in recent years. Written messages can be sent between two or more people with computing facilities. Printouts of messages can be obtained as a hard copy. So I can, let's say, I can send a message through the email, or I can just actually use this, let's say, this technology and to print out, to have a hard copy of the message and send it to the person. And also, this is using the internet, it allows an easy and effective communication with customers and suppliers, whether I'm communicating internally, or let's say I'm communicating externally. So the advantages of written communications. So let's see the benefits why some managers they use, let's say, the written communication method. Number one, because there is a hard evidence of the message. So I can have, let's say, this document, this report, whenever I need it in the future, and it also helps to reduce disagreements between the sender and the receiver about the contents of the message. So there's, let's say, an evidence. It's an evidence. It's something that I have in case there was, let's say, a misunderstanding, a disagreement, and so on. Number two, it is essential for certain messages involving complicated details which might be misunderstood. So when the message that the manager is trying to send to the employees or to the supplier or the customer, it contains a lot of details. So verbal communication, it's not, let's say, the right way to use. It's not the right way to use. And in a lot of countries, it requires, let's say, certain safety messages to be written and displayed in offices and factories. In order, if I want to communicate something with a lot of details, it's better to be written, and it's better to be, let's say, displayed for the employees. And a written message can be copied and it can be sent to many people. This could be more efficient than just using the, let's say, sending the same message over and over and over for a lot of people. No, I just copy this report, I'll copy this email, and I'll send it. I will distribute it to a high number of employees. Also, electronic communication is quick and cheap way to reach large number of people, and we're talking about the written emails. The disadvantages of a written communication is the direct feedback. It's not always possible unless electronic communication is used. So if I like, it could have like a feedback, but like if I'm sending an email, this email is going to lead to a lot of feedback, and a lot of, let's say, replies are being created, and it's going to have an information overload, meaning like that a lot of people, they're going to be sending their response on the same email, and it's going to be like a chaos. So uh, let's say over here, it is not easy to check the message has been received and acted upon as with verbal messages, although this can be done with an email as a please acknowledge function can be set up. So this is also the second disadvantage of written communication, and it's not easy to check if the message has been received. Number three, the language used can be difficult for some receivers to understand. So uh, I might use, let's say the barrier of language. I, as a sender, I can write an email that has a lot of terms, a lot of things that actually the receiver will not understand. Even if it's like, if the message is too long, it's also confusing, and the reader will lose interest, or he will not, or she will not read all the email, let's say, with really, let's say, without focusing. There's no opportunity for body language to be used to reinforce the message as it's happening in the verbal communication. I cannot see the body language, the facial expressions of the sender of the message to actually understand it more accurately. Here we have the visual communication methods. And so the third method over here. So when I'm talking about the visual communication method, it includes the following. Number one, films, videos using the Microsoft Office, Microsoft PowerPoint displays, often used by businesses to help train new staff or to inform sales people about the new product, using figures, using, let's say, diagrams, and so on. And here we have also posters. It can be used to explain a simple but important message. That means of a picture of a cartoon, I can use, let's say, just a poster to actually use it to explain something, let's say, big, something with a lot of details. Also, we have here charts and diagrams can be used in reports or letters to show numerical data, or to simplify complicated ideas, or even to show how to such as how the business is organized using charts and diagrams, as also over here photographs and cartoons. They can be used to add variety, color, and humor to the message, which is like, it's just like to make sure that this message is gonna be read because I attracted the attention of the receiver, and also it's gonna be understood by the receiver as well. Here we're gonna be talking about advantages of visual communication. Uh, these methods can present like an advantage. Why would I use, let's say, a diagram? Why would I use a picture, a cartoon? Because it can present information in appealing and attractive way. And also, people are often more prepared to look at films or posters, videos, to read letters or notices because they are interesting way of to communicate the message. Also, we're just talking about it, this method being more attractive. They can be used to make a written message clearer by adding a chart, a diagram to illustrate the point being made. So instead of just saying a lot of details, I just can use a chart, a diagram that's gonna make this whole thing more clearer and understandable for the receiver. Meanwhile, here over here, disadvantage of visual communication. There is no feedback, and the sender of the message may need to use other forms of communication to check if the message has been understood. So imagine if I sent you just a picture and I didn't ask for a feedback, and actually, let's say, it's not going to help me to get a feedback from the receiver. And also here, charts and graphs are difficult for some people to interpret. So a lot of, like, I can send a picture and this picture will not be understood by the receivers of the message. I can send a chart or a graph, but the receiver didn't actually understand this chart, so it could not, like, it's difficult for a lot of people to actually understand, and it could cause a problem of the receiver could misunderstood the whole message. Here we have formal and informal communication. So, let's know the difference between formal communication and informal communication. The first one is the formal communication is when messages are sent through established channels using professional language. So, the first thing we must understand about the formal communication is we're actually sending messages, but the way we're sending this message is established. We use it using established channels, and also we use in the formal communication professional language in delivering this message over here. Meanwhile, the informal communication is when information is sent and received, usually the, let's say, the using the everyday language over here. So, uh, over here, these are examples of formal communication. It's like a notice board over here, a report, a memo, an email. This is all or attend official meetings. So whenever we are doing an official professional meeting, we must use formal communication using professional language, and while we are communicating with others. And also here we have the informal channels such as meeting with friends or contact with others in the canteen or at break time. This is informal, unrecognized meetings, and sometimes referred to as, let's say, grapevine, which is like we're just using informal channels, and we're using informal languages. We're not we're talking to each other in the everyday language. Here we have the direction of communication over here. So let's look at this, let's look at this chart over here, the organizational chart. We have here the chief executive, and we have here the employees with their levels. And here we're going to understand the direction. Pay attention, we're talking here about the direction of the communication. So here, arrow A shows downward communication. So the first one we have downward communication. So what is downward communication? Can you see over here it's A, and this is the arrow going down. This is downward communication. It's when the message are sent from managers to subordinates, someone with high level to a lower level, from a manager to a subordinate. So when can I use a downward communication? Number one, for instructions. If a manager wants to send an instruction for, let's say, subordinates, or statements on important business decision. If the manager did a quick decision and wants to inform the subordinates, and also it does not allow for feedback. If these messages have to be passed through many levels of the hierarchy, then the original meaning of the message could become distort distorted, sorry, distorted. Okay, so if there's a lot of level, imagine like if we have here, let's say 11 levels. So the chief executive wants to send like a subordinate, and let's say here we have C, let's say, imagine we have N. So they say that the more the levels, the less, let's say, the message will be more will be accurate and clear for the receiver. And here we have arrow B, which is over here. Pay attention, okay? And it's going upwards. Upward communication, it's when a message or feedback is passed from subordinates to managers, from someone with low level in the hierarchy or the, let's say, organizational chart, all the way to managers. So when do we do an upward communication? When the subordinate wants to send a feedback, and it is an essential part of effective communication, or workers in the organization have much to offer by being involved in the communication process. They want to send their opinion, their feedback, their response, their comments, and so on. And also we have the third direction is arrow C over here. So RC is horizontal communication, and sometimes referred to as lateral communication. It occurs when people at the same level in the organization, they communicate with each other. So in the same level, they have the same position, and they are just communicating with each other. So information ideas can be exchanged at both formal and informal meetings in the horizontal communication. How communication barriers arise and how to reduce or to remove them. So let's see, what is a communication barrier at the first place. So the communication barriers are factors that stop effective communication, which is the ultimate goal in the whole communication lesson, of the messages. So a lot of things that might happen, that might, let's say, something that might happen between the four parts of the factors, which is sender, receiver, medium, and feedback. A lot of barriers might happen that makes, let's say, the communication process more, let's say, ineffective, and it's called barrier. Okay, so let's see over here the common barriers to effective communication and ways to overcome them. And over here we have the barrier, we have what is the description, and also how to, let's say, reduce or to remove this problem. So we said that the barriers could happen with the sender, and with in the medium, and in the receiver, and in the feedback as well. So let's see problems that might happen or with the sender. The first one is the language is too difficult language, which is too difficult, is used. All right, so the sender is using a difficult language over here. How can I overcome this problem or this barrier and to reduce it? To make sure simply that the sender must use a language that is understandable by the receiver. And the second problem, the sender uses verbal means of communication, but speaks too quickly or not clearly enough. The sender is using, let's say, using the telephone, and he's speaking way too quickly. The receiver is not, let's say, able to understand the message. The sender should make the message as clear as possible, and at the end of the phone call, the sender should ask for feedback, asking if the message is understood and everything is clear for the receiver. The sender communicates the wrong message or passes to the wrong receiver. So here we have two problems. Either the sender sending the wrong message to the receiver or actually sending the right message but to the wrong receiver. The sender must make sure that the right person is receiving the right message. Excuse me. The message is too long and it's too much details prevent the main points being understood. This is again the fault of the sender. So the message should be brief as possible to allow the main points to be understood. The sender is sending too much details and the receiver is not, let's say, able to understand the main points of the message because it has a lot of details. So as a sender, I should, let's say, send the message as brief as possible, just sending the main points so the receiver can actually understand the message. Problems with the medium or with the method. The message may be lost so the receiver does not see it. I'm using a method where the message is lost. It is important to insist on feedback. If no feedback is received, then the sender assumes the message was lost. So to make sure that even if the message is lost, in order to reduce this problem, to make sure that the receiver is sending feedback, just make sure that the message is sent and it's not lost. The wrong channel has been used. For example, an important message was put on the notice board, which most people did not read. So the wrong channel for the message. The sender must select the appropriate channel for each message sent. So simply just use, let's say, the channel that as a sender you must know that all receivers are going to pay attention to. If the message is sent down a long chain of command, the original meaning of the message may be lost. It could become distorted. So the shortest possible channel should be used to avoid this problem. You must make sure that if you want to send a message, to send it down, fine, but to make sure that you use the shortest possible channel so the message can send like as it is and with clear meaning. No feedback is received. I'm using a medium that's not allowing any feedback from the receiver. This could be because, for example, a letter was sent to workers asking for their opinions. A meeting would have been more useful. So if you want a feedback, choose a medium that allows you to get a feedback from the receiver simply. Breakdown of the medium, for example, computer failure or postal strike. So I'm using a medium, let's say I'm writing emails, I'm using a written way of communication, and actually we're facing technical problems. Also here, other forms of communication should where possible be made available. You should switch to another form of communication and to send your message and choose another medium. Here we have problems with the receiver. They might not be listening or paying attention. As a receiver, maybe the receiver is not listening and he's not interested, he's not paying attention. The importance of the message should be emphasized. The receiver should be asked for feedback to make sure that he understood what the sender is actually talking about. The receiver may not like or trust the sender. They may be unwilling to act upon his or her messages. Sometimes, like between the sender and the receiver, it could be like problems. So the receiver will not like to get even messages from the sender. There's no trust with the sender. There should be trust between sender and receiver. There should be on good terms, or there's no effective communication, and also or perhaps another sender should be used who is respected by the receiver. Should like switch the sender if let's say the first sender has problems with the receiver. Problems with feedback. Simply there is no feedback. This is a problem. If I'm sending a message that requires the feedback and there is no feedback, there's a problem in the feedback. Perhaps no feedback was asked for. Maybe it's a problem, let's say, started from the sender. He didn't ask for any feedback, and also perhaps the method of communication used did not allow the feedback. Also a problem in the medium used. An alternative method of communication might have been better. So you just like ask for feedback and also choose a method that allows feedback as well. It is received too slowly or it is distorted. As with the original message, perhaps the feedback is passing through too many people before being received by the original sender. So, especially when it's like the upward communication, where the manager is waiting for a subordinate to, let's say, to get the feedback from subordinate, there's a lot of levels. Okay, so there is a feedback, but it's being received, let's say, too slowly. So there should be a direct lines of communication between subordinates and managers, and it must be available. And also, if there is a way to directly communicate with the subordinate, it would be more effective. Thank you. That was the last lesson in section 2. Please study well. Best of luck.